My name is Noah Delgado. I am 24 years old, and last Tuesday, I opened the door to my bedroom and found it wasn't my bedroom anymore. The air smelled like lemon cleaner and wet paint. My comforter was gone, my drawers were empty, and a new sign hung crooked over the frame. Habitation de Damian. The brass knob was cold in my palm. The walls kept the pale outlines of my old posters, like ghosts that refused to leave. Mom appeared with a tired smile and said the things I wasn't using had been donated to the church. A black trash bag slumped by the hallway like a body. I clicked my pen 3 times to stop my hands from shaking and stared at the empty space where my life used to fit. But what they didn't know was that I had already seen where those donations really went. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. It helps this channel reach people who need these stories, and it tells the algorithm to keep the truth loud. Now take a breath with me. We're going back to where I grew up, in a house that always smelled like cumin and sawdust. Mom simmered beans until the kitchen steamed up the windows, and Dad tracked home the grit of his hardware shop on the soles of his boots. Our dining table was oak-scarred with rings from sweating glasses and tiny burns where someone, usually Damien, set a hot tool down without thinking. There were 4 chairs that wobbled if you breathed on them too hard. I used to slip a folded napkin under mine to keep it steady, my little private fix. No one noticed. If I'm honest, that napkin felt like a metaphor for me, even before I knew what metaphors were. At those dinners, Dad always asked the same question, the one that sounded like a joke but wasn't. So who pulled their weight today? He'd lean back, rub the oil stain on his thumb, and look at Damien first. My brother didn't have to say much. He'd grin, toss out a line about helping in the garage or making a connection for his future shop, and Dad would nod like he was listening to the evening news. If I mentioned finishing a project or staying late at school to help set up the science fair, Dad would point with his fork and say, "Good, your brother could use that discipline." The compliment floated right past me and landed in Damien's lap. I laughed because laughing made it sting less. I didn't know it then, but that's how a silence learns to breathe. There was a picture wall in the hallway, the family museum. Damian and soccer trophies. Damian leaning on a shiny car that wasn't ours. Damian shaking hands with a city councilman after volunteering at a car show. My photos existed too crooked, a little darker, like the printer was running out of ink. In the third frame from the bottom, I'm holding a certificate with my hair pinned back because Mom said my bangs made me look like I was hiding. You can't see the certificate clearly unless you squint. I used to stand there and try to read the blurred letters as if proof would show up if I just stared hard enough. It didn't. Years later, when I took my first long shift at the lab, the hum of the centrifuge sounded like the kitchen fan at home. The lab lights buzzed with that tinny halo, and the walls were so white they felt cold enough to touch and leave frost. I learned to count inventory by the sound of caps clicking shut. I learned that if you ran your knuckle along a label, you could feel the seam, and that was how you knew it was secure. Every night at 1:47 a.m., the vending machine coughed and spit out a bag of chips someone had jammed earlier. I started clicking my pen 3 times before any delicate step. pH checks, aliquots, logging temperatures like a superstition. I didn't know it then, but the habit would be the only sound I could control when the rest of my life got loud. Before the lab came the summer I turned 18. A guidance counselor called our landline every other day about a scholarship, out of state, the kind that would have paid for dorms and books, and made me a tiny person in a giant library. I took the call sitting on the edge of the bathtub because the fan masked my voice. "You'll love it," the counselor said. "You sound like someone who likes order." I did love order. I loved lists and drawers that shut all the way. Dad knocked on the door and told me not to waste water. That night, Mom folded dish towels and said soft as a lullaby, "Your father needs help. Family first, just for a year or two." The next day, the scholarship letter curled on the counter near the microwave. I left it there and went to fill out an application at the pharmacy. I swallowed it, but it carved deeper than I thought. Money has a sound. It's the flutter of a gas bill on the fridge, the thin rip of a checkbook, the clatter of coins in a glove compartment. When I got hired part-time, then full-time, I brought envelopes home on Fridays like little offerings. Just until the shop turns around, Dad promised. He smelled like WD-40 and coffee when he hugged me. Mom tucked my envelopes into a blue tin labeled recipes. In the second week of July, the blue tin moved to the top cabinet, and I needed a chair to reach it. I hovered, their fingers just grazing the edge, when I saw another envelope. It had my name written in Mom's tidy slant. College fund. The seal had been sliced open cleanly. Inside was a single receipt from an auto parts warehouse with my brother's signature at the bottom. Investment, Dad said when I asked. Your brother's a builder. I didn't know it then, but the word builder would become a spell they used whenever something was taken and needed to feel noble. On my 21st birthday, we ordered pizza and forgot about the cake. Damian rolled the tool cabinet into the garage with a victory whoop. The neighbors came by to help mount shelves. I stood at the threshold holding a box of my old school books. Mom kissed my temple and whispered, "We'll find a spot for those later, me aimer," but there was no later. The books slept in the trunk of my car for 6 months. It felt practical. It felt temporary. It felt like waiting outside your own house without knocking. That night, the garage light burned until morning, and the frosting on my cake turned crusty. I swallowed it, but it carved deeper than I thought. Holidays ran on lopsided math. On Christmas, Damian got a torque wrench set heavy enough to rest like a baby in Dad's arms. I got a soft sweater, which I loved truly, but the tag still dangled from the sleeve like the price had been the point. At Easter, Mom tucked cash into Damian's plastic egg for gas, then put a folded grocery receipt into mine with a note. "Thank you for picking up milk and detergent, sweetheart." I told myself gratitude is a kind of gift you can't measure. Sometimes I believed it. Sometimes it felt like I'd been paid in thank yous for work that required a wage. When Inez moved out after nursing school, the house got quieter in a way that felt dangerous. She had balanced the table, asking questions no one else asked, nudging the conversation toward light. Without her, Dad's voice was a little louder, Mom's sighs a little longer, Damian's jokes a little meaner. Inez still stopped by with hospital coffee, squeezing my shoulder and slipping me small things: compression socks, a planner, a lipstick she thought would look good on me. "You should keep your own receipts," she said, once eyes on the fridge calendar. I thought she meant grocery receipts. I didn't know it then, but she meant something bigger. The summer storms came like tantrums. The roof complained and the driveway swelled and the mailbox tilted. Dad patched what he could, proud of every fix. He kept boxes of leftover pipe and fittings in the garage, the kind of supply that made him feel ready for anything. Ready to him meant he didn't have to ask for help. I grew ready in other ways. I kept my work badge around my neck even at home because the lanyard felt like proof I existed somewhere I didn't have to audition. I remember a Thursday when Mom was rinsing beans and humming, and I was sorting laundry. "You know," she said, casual, almost sweet, "Father Louise says the church pantry always needs donations. Maybe we should clean the garage, clear out things nobody uses." I set down a towel and opened my mouth and closed it. We both looked toward the garage door as if the things could hear us. "Just a thought," she added, smiling, all teeth and sunlight. Later that night, I found a little sticker gun, one of those price labelers, on the counter under a heap of rubber bands. It stuck to my palm when I picked it up. I didn't know it then, but Mom's church had a profile picture and 5-star ratings. The first time I went with Dad to the parts store, the man behind the counter acted like Dad was a famous regular. "Hey Hefe," he called, thumbs up over a stack of PVC elbows. Dad introduced me as the responsible one, and the man laughed like that was a punchline. While Dad argued about a discount, I wandered to a clearance bin. Copper fittings glinted like coins at the bottom of a wishing well. I imagined dropping a question in what if responsibility didn't mean erasing yourself until nobody noticed you were gone? The well didn't answer. On our way out, Dad said, "Good practice, Noah. Learn the ropes. Your brother will need a bookkeeper." I smiled so he wouldn't see the flinch. The night I found the bank envelope under the microwave, the house was already asleep. There were spaghetti splatters on the stove and the smell of bleach in the air. The envelope had Olivaro's bank logo printed in blue and a strip of carbon paper sticking out. Refinance signatures enclosed. My name was in a small box at the bottom, not as an owner, not even as a co-signer, but as something called a contingency contact. I traced the letters with my thumbnail until the paper frayed. It looked harmless. It looked like emergency information. It looked like a seatbelt someone else could fasten around my neck. I tucked it back where I found it because I wanted to believe in harmless things. In the lab, the older tech Maribel used to say, "Control what you can measure." She wrote it on a sticky note and stuck it above the pH meter where everyone could see. I adopted it like a creed. I measured my breaths while Dad monologued about loyalty. I counted seconds between Mom's sighs when I said I couldn't cover the propane bill this month. I logged small, strange details the familiar way. Damian wiped his hands on towels. He didn't wash the way. Mom's phone pinged a different chime when she got messages from her customers. The way the garage lock turned easier after Dad oiled it. Like the door was hungry to open from the outside, closed tight from within. I didn't know it then, but I was building a record by accident. One Sunday after church, Tia Rosa pressed a foil pan of flan into my hands and whispered, "You look tired, Mahija." The parking lot was a river of heat, and the flan wobbled like a living thing. "Just working," I said. "And helping," she replied, narrowing her eyes at my parents loading boxes into the trunk. "But do they help you?" I laughed it off because I didn't have inventory for that question yet. I still thought help had to be loud to count. I hadn't learned that sometimes help is a door left unlocked or a file saved to a USB or a message written in a subject line you can see even if you never open it. I kept telling myself it was normal. Families are messy. Everyone says so. People borrow and pay back. Siblings get extra, then you even it out later. I said those sentences like spells and waited for balance to show up like a late bus. Meanwhile, I organized the pantry. I labeled the flour. I found a home for everything except the ache that sat behind my lungs. When it grew too big, I clicked my pin 1, 2, 3. The sound was small, but it mapped a border in the air that felt like mine. The first time I won something real, it was a regional science award for a water filtration prototype I built out of charcoal sand and a hacked aquarium pump. The auditorium smelled like dust and hairspray. Mom smoothed my collar. Dad checked his watch. When they called my name, the applause startled me so badly, I almost tripped on the steps. I lifted the plaque and tried to find my family's faces in the bright wash of the stage lights. Later, by the car, Dad said, "Good. Your brother could use that discipline in his shop one day." Damian revved a borrowed engine and yelled over the noise, "Take a picture of me with it, Ma." In the photo from that night, I'm a smudge in the side mirror, holding my plaque by the door handle while Mom frames Damian like he's the main event. I smiled when I saw the print. I told myself the mirror shot was artsy. We were a diner family when money allowed. Vinyl booths that squeaked under your thighs. Syrup crust around the cap. Waitresses who called you honey like they'd known you before you were born. If Damian was with us, Dad let him order the steak and eggs because protein. I learned to want pancakes because pancakes came cheaper and tasted like a choice. One night, a neon sign fizzed and buzzed in the window while rain stitched silver lines across the street. Damian tapped his fork and said, "When I get my own shop, I'm putting my name in chrome across the wall." Mom clasped her hands under her chin like prayer. "And your sister will keep you organized," Dad said, not asking. I pressed the edge of my plate until the syrup made a perfect oval. "If he hires me," I said. Nobody laughed. The waitress refilled our water and winked at me as if she'd heard something I didn't. Inez taught me how to keep records without getting caught. She didn't call it that. She called it tidying. When she still lived at home, she'd sit cross-legged on her bed and build little folders on a hand, me down laptop taxes, pay stubs, immunizations, bank statements. She used a thumb drive shaped like a silver key. "If you don't keep your own papers," she said, "someone else will decide what counts." She touched my shoulder and looked over it into the hallway like the house might be listening. The first file she made for me was labeled simply Noah. Years later, that stupid simple folder would be the lock on a door I didn't know I'd need to close. Some afternoons after shifts, I stopped by the bank to deposit cash because Dad preferred envelopes over apps. That's where I met Alvaro. He had a voice like a lullaby for adults, calm, practical, the sound of paper turning into something official. He learned my name not because I was important, but because repetition is a kind of care. "Afternoons are the safest," he said once, stamping a slip. "Mornings, the line gets mean." He asked about the lab. I asked about the interest rates board behind him because it felt like reading the weather. One day, he gestured to my ID and said, "You're a contingency contact on your parents' account. It's a good safety point." I nodded like I understood. The word safety smelled like bleach to me, clean, sharp, a little dangerous if you breathe too deep. I didn't ask him what else contingency could mean. I should have. I would later. Dad kept a spiral notebook by the phone in the kitchen, greasy, with fingerprints and dotted with sawdust freckles. The book held numbers for plumbers and suppliers and a guy named Tito who could fix anything with a punch and a prayer. I flipped through it to find the cable company once and saw a page where Dad had practiced signing his name over and over bigger each time. On the next page, Mom had written Elena Navarro with her maiden flourish, like she missed how her name used to fit when it belonged only to her. My name didn't appear in that notebook. It appeared on sticky notes slapped to the fridge, pick up bleach, call pharmacy, buy more trash bags. Sometimes my name was a reminder to myself written in tiny letters by the microwave clock, you still exist. I kept track of the small humiliations because small things stack tall if you never knock them down. Thanksgiving, when Mom whispered there was no space at the table for the extra chair I dragged in for Mateo because family day is family. Later she sent me with a plate of leftovers to his place anyway, and he met me at the door in socks and said, "You always look like you're apologizing, Noah." Christmas. When Dad gave Damian an impact driver and told me, "You'll love this," and handed me a planner. I did love the planner, actually. I loved the clean grids and the promise it made. But the way he said "you'll love this" sounded like he was telling me who I was allowed to be. On New Year's, while fireworks cracked like bones in the sky, Damian shouted resolutions about horsepower, and Mom toasted to builders. I wrote one resolution in my planner under the kitchen light: save enough to move out by fall. Then I crossed it out because fall sounded selfish. I learned by accident how to get fees waived. If you call a company and start with "Hi, this is Noah, and I was wondering if you could help me," people soften. If you say "I know it's my fault" just once, the rep on the other end will offer a credit like a candy to a good child. Mom coached me. Smile through the phone, she whispered, mouthing the words, while I negotiated with the utility lady about a late payment. When the call ended, Mom kissed my cheek, swept my hair behind my ear, and said, "What would I do without you?" It felt like love when she said it. It also felt like a leash braided from compliments. I started hearing the difference. At the lab, there's a refrigerator that hums louder when you lean on it. When I finally leaned, really leaned, it rattled like a confession. Maribel told me stories about her children and how she'd left one life for another, and how both had been hard in ways that didn't cancel out. "You can love people and set boundaries," she said, as if reading my spine. I clicked my pin. 1, 2, 3. "Boundaries sound mean," I said. "They sound like a no with a fence around it." She laughed without smiling. "Sometimes, fences keep cows alive." The house changed in little jolts. Mom started getting packages with cute pastel tape. She called the dining table my staging area and brushed off crumbs with the back of her hand like a stage manager. The price gun appeared and disappeared like a magician's coin. The church basement sale flyers kept piling up on the counter, but the dates passed and the piles shifted to other piles. When I mentioned a shirt I couldn't find, Mom said, "You haven't worn that in months." She wasn't wrong. But the way she said it was a key turning in a lock I didn't know we had. On Saturdays, the neighbor, Mr. Lindstrom, walked his tiny dog at 7:06 a.m. He told time by habit, not clocks. He wore a visor and mirrored sunglasses and waved even when no one waved back. He clipped the camera above his garage after raccoons dragged his trash into a party one night. Motion activated, he announced to anyone who would listen. "This thing sees everything." Damian laughed and called him Robo-Grandpa. I pretended to laugh because it was easier. I didn't know the little blinking blue eye over Mr. Lindstrom's door would become a witness with a better memory than any of us. The summer heat broke into a storm that scratched at the roof for 3 days. Water found the lazy seams. We set out pots and bowls and baked sheets to catch the drips. The sound of water falling into metal became the soundtrack of our living room. Damian said he could fix it. Dad said they could fix anything. They laid out tools like knives on a surgeon's tray. I made sandwiches. When the rain stopped, the ceiling still wept a little tears that didn't make a scene. That was the house in a sentence, things holding but just. I met Doña Pilar at a church fish fry. She wore a cardigan the color of toothpaste and a face that told you she took no nonsense. She ran the raffle table like a courtroom. When I bought a ticket, she looked at my hands. "You work with them," she said, like a verdict. "Yes, ma'am," I said, and she nodded, satisfied by the callous logic. Later, Tia Rosa whispered that Doña Pilar owned a boarding house 2 streets over. "She's strict," Tia said, "but fair. No parties. No men past 10. But fair." I filed the name away like a specimen label. I didn't think I'd need it. I preferred not needing things. Mateo and I met for real the night my car battery died behind the coffee shop. He had flour on his cheek, even though he wasn't a baker, just a barista with a love for pastries he couldn't afford. He jumped my car and then handed me a paper cup with a heart drawn on the lid. "You look like someone who could use a couch," he said. I laughed and said I have one. He shrugged. "Maybe not forever." I tucked his number behind my phone case and told myself I'd never call it. Later, I would dial with my thumb without looking like muscle memory in reverse. Time flattened around routines. Lab home envelopes dinner dad's stories about grit. Mom's stories about saints who sacrificed Damian and stories about engines that purred like big cats. My stories were mostly weather. Cold in the fridge today, I'd say. The thermostat's off. People nodded. They offered me more bread. One afternoon when the house was empty, I cleaned my room with the zeal of a convert. I wiped baseboards. I gathered the hair that had escaped into corners. I folded shirts until the stack sat like a block. When I opened the closet, a wave of warm dust breathed on my face. On the top shelf, I found a shoebox labeled Winter. Inside lay my old scarf and a stack of cards I didn't recognize. They were business cards that said Navarro Resales in Mom's handwriting, with a phone number one digit off from the family line. I held them until my fingers made little half-moons in the cardstock. I put them back because putting things back had been my talent since childhood, but my hands shook when I closed the lid. I clicked my pen 1, 2, 3. Even before Tuesday, the night of the wet paint smell, and the crooked sign, I had started to feel the house pushing me to the edges like a body rejecting a splinter. At dinner, Dad said, "Your brother's business is a family investment." He said investment like the word itself made money. Mom said, "We all sacrifice in different ways." Damian smirked at his phone. "Noah likes her little lab. She's fine." I took a breath measured by the hum of the refrigerator and heard somewhere deep a sound like a tiny rope snapping. I wish I could say there was one clear villain and one clear saint, but our house didn't do absolutes. Mom also kissed my forehead when I had headaches. Dad also showed up to jump my car in the pharmacy parking lot without making me beg. Damian also brought me a donut at midnight once because I'd said out loud that sugar sounded holy. That's how family keeps you loyal, not only with debts, but with tenderness that lands like rain on a dry lawn. You tell yourself you can live on rain every other week. You tell yourself you don't need a well. By late summer, my planner had more whiteout than ink. Every time I wrote move out by, something happened. Dad needed a part now to get through a big job. Mom's side hustle hit a dry spell. Damian's friend crashed his bike and needed help covering emergency room x-rays. I watched my savings creep and recede like a tide that had somewhere better to be. I taped a tiny photo from a magazine. Inside the front cover of the planner, a studio apartment with a fern in the window and a chair with a throw draped like a hug. Mateo saw it once and said, "Nice dream." I said, "It's not a dream. It's just a picture." The Sunday before everything cracked open, Inez came by with hospital coffee and a paperback she thought I'd like. She lingered in the doorway of my room, scanning the shelves. "You ever think of getting a lock?" she asked. I laughed. "For what?" "My stash of lab gloves." She didn't laugh. She set the book on my desk and lowered her voice. "If you need somewhere to put important things, I have a spare key." She meant her apartment. She also meant something smaller and tougher. She meant, "I see the way the house shifts under your feet. I see the way you're bracing." She hugged me, left lipstick on my cheek, and whispered, "Control what you can measure." I didn't click my pen because holding perfectly still felt louder. The next 2 days were ordinary in the way minutes are ordinary on the edge of an earthquake. Lab coffee. Home, the price gun on the counter like a toy. Dad's boots by the door. Damian's laughter through the wall. Mom humming while the washing machine knocked its hip against the dryer. If you'd asked me then what I expected from Tuesday night, I would have said leftover arroz con polo and three voices arguing over a game show. I would not have said bleach and lemon and the absence of my life reduced to a sign. But the truth is, the sign had been hanging for years invisible. They just made it legible. I tell you all this so you know I didn't wake up me. I didn't wake up cold. I woke up tired of mispronouncing my own name so it would fit inside somebody else's sentence. I had been the napkin under the wobbly chair so long I forgot chairs weren't supposed to wobble. When I saw my room repainted into my brother's promise, I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I tasted metal on my tongue and clicked my pen 1, 2, 3. Then I started counting something else. The night of the sign, our family group chat lit up like a siren. It started with a photo from Mom, a blurry plate of enchiladas with the caption, "Dinner is ready." I stared at it on Mateo's couch with my shoes still on my backpack under my knees like a shield. Then Damian chimed in, "Noah, stop being dramatic. You don't even sleep there half the time." A second later, Dad wrote, "We made a decision as a family. Rent is non-negotiable." I typed and deleted 3 replies until my thumbs ached. Finally, I sent one line, "Please don't sell or give away my things." The dots bubbled. Mom replied, "Baby, I already donated the stuff you weren't using. It's for the church pantry. Be proud." I could hear her soft voice in my head, that gentle blanket tone, and I had to set the phone face down because the gentleness made my eyes burn. I went back the next afternoon while they were all at work. The house smelled like lemon and something plasticky, like a shower curtain just unwrapped. My room was a stranger. The closet bar was empty, except for two wire hangers that scraped against each other when the air conditioner kicked on. I went to the garage. The lock turned, but only halfway. Dad had changed it or oiled it in a way that made it resist me. I pressed my forehead to the cool metal and listened to the hollow inside like it was a seashell. The garage used to be the safe place where my boxes lived. Now, it breathed like another chest. I sat on the bottom step with my phone and typed church pantry into the search bar. Then, because a feeling is sometimes smarter than a plan, I opened the Marketplace app. I scrolled without knowing what I hoped to find. The third row down there, it was a ceramic lamp with a chip at the base, the chip I had covered with a sticker when I was 15. The photo was clean and bright, the description precise. Vintage ceramic lamp, barely used, pickup only. The seller's name was Elena with a pink heart next to it. I touched the screen like I could lift the lamp out. My stomach did a small tight flip, like missing a step in the dark. I clicked the profile. The banner photo was a floral pattern and the ratings sparkled 5 stars. The listings felt like a fingerprint, a wool coat from last winter. The blue tin labeled recipes. A set of glass jars I'd organized by pasta shape. I sent a message, "Hi, is the lamp still available?" I waited. The house ticked. The fridge hummed. Somewhere outside, Mr. Lindstrom's little dog yapped at an invisible enemy. From the kitchen, Mom's second phone pinged. It was the distinct bubble trill I'd heard for months, the one she always said was her prayer group. The ping came again, closer this time, under the tea towel by the sink. I lifted the towel. The screen flashed a preview of my own message. My face went cold, then hot, then cold again. I stepped back like the phone might bite. I wasn't going to fight with a ringtone. I took 3 pictures, listings, the profile, the lamp, and sent them to my email because my email felt like a vault I owned. I backed out of the app, opened contacts, and scrolled to Inez. "Call me when you can," I wrote. "Urgent but not an emergency." She replied with a single R shorthand for "I'm at work," and then half an hour later a second dot that meant "Meet me by the hospital loading dock in 10. Inez's break smelled like fried food and antiseptic. She handed me a water and a folded manila envelope with my name written in her careful print. Her eyes were tired but bright, the way someone looks when they've decided something and are waiting to see if it sticks. "I shouldn't have this," she said. "But you should." Inside were copies of the refinance paperwork. The pages were boring on purpose, a forest of numbers, but my name blinked like a survival beacon in a small box. Contingency beneficiary, non-owner contact. "It's a nothing box until it isn't," Inez said. "If the payment lapses, the bank calls you first. If Dad and Mom sign anything new, they might use you as proof the family is covered." She lowered her voice. "And there's a line about authorizations. It leaves space for adding one later." "I never authorized anything," I said. "You didn't," she said. "And I'm not saying they're planning to do something. I'm saying the structure sits there like a mousetrap, even if no one touches it." I pressed the heel of my hand between my eyes until colors bloomed. "Why me?" I said, though I knew the answer. Responsible one. The napkin under the wobbly chair. The silence that does chores. Inez touched my wrist. "Because you say yes. Because you won't let the whole house fall. Because you're easy to reach." We stood for a minute while a delivery truck beeped in reverse like a mechanical bird. "If I scan these, can I keep the copies?" I asked. "You can keep that envelope," she said. "I took photos for me. Control what you can measure." She waited for me to smile and didn't push when I didn't. On the way home, the world felt overexposed. The sun hammered the windshield. Kids on bikes flashed like warning signs. When I turned onto our street, Damianen's car was in the driveway, hood up, music thumping. He looked up and made a "come here" motion with his chin, a command dressed as a question. "You see the room?" he said when I rolled down the window. "Looks good, right?" He had a smear of grease on his cheek like war paint. "It's temporary," he added. "Dad says you can use the den. We're all making sacrifices." "I didn't agree to sacrifice," I said. He laughed. "You never have to. You're the kind of person who just does it." It should have been a compliment. It sounded like a diagnosis. I drove around the block twice before I parked because my hands wouldn't unclench from the steering wheel. When I finally walked inside, Mom was at the sink, the extra phone face down under a towel, like a pet in timeout. She didn't turn around. We made enchiladas, she said. Eat before it gets dry. I messaged the seller about the lamp, I said. My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. You should be happy your things are helping someone, she said. The dishwater rushed. I'm honestly tired, Noah. I don't have energy for a fight. I'm not fighting, I said. I'm asking you to stop selling my things. The words felt narrow and sharp like cutting through fabric with a blade only I could see. She turned, then smile on eyes glossy. You haven't used them in months. I breathed in the smell of lemon and old food. They were mine, I said. Not the church's. Not the internet's. Mine. She opened and closed her hands over the dish towel as if counting. We're all making sacrifices, she said softly, and there it was again, the holy word. I clicked my pen in my pocket. 1, 2, 3. The sound was small, but it kept me from drowning. That night on Mateo's couch, I spread the papers from Inez across my knees. The lines blurred if I looked too long, so I traced my name with the tip of the pen until the ink threatened to smear. Mateo brought me a grilled cheese and set it on the armrest like an offering. You look like you're holding gasoline, he said. Matches, I said. Gasoline sounds too dramatic. Truth burns either way, he said, and went back to his sink, singing under his breath a sound like a rope pulling something heavy up from a well. The texts kept coming. Dad, practical and clipped. We need you to be part of the team. Mom, soft and heavy. My heart hurts when you shut me out. Damian, joking with blade edges. Don't be selfish. It's a small room. I turned the phone off and stared at the ceiling, counting hairline cracks I'd never noticed. I wasn't ready to run. I wasn't ready to stay. I was ready for something I couldn't name yet, a readiness that felt like a steadying breath before a plunge. By morning, I had a plan small enough to go to the bank alone, ask questions with my full name, find out where my signature could or could not be dragged. The lab shift started late that day. I put on my white shirt, tucked it in, laced my shoes tight, and watched my face in Mateo's bathroom mirror until it matched the voice I wanted to use. Calm. Clear. The opposite of apologizing. Alvaro recognized me the second I stepped into the bank. The lobby smelled like toner and winter coats drying. Afternoons are kinder, he said, motioning me to his window. I slid my ID across the counter and said my name like a statement you could notarize. I need to know where my signature lives, I added. And where it doesn't. He nodded, typed, and kept his voice level. You're a contingency contact on your parents' mortgage, no ownership, no payment obligation. However, he paused, eyes flicking to a small alert on his screen. Someone called yesterday asking about adding a signature authorization for equipment financing. They asked if an audio confirmation would count. He looked up. We do not accept that. In person only. By the actual person. He tapped a note. I flagged the account. If anyone tries, we'll call you directly and require ID in the branch. The breath I'd been holding slid out like a knot loosening. Thank you, I said. My hands were steady on the counter. Can we also add a note that I revoke any prior verbal authorizations anyone might claim I gave? We can document your statement that no such authorization exists, he said, and we can place a requirement any future authorization must be in person with you present with ID. It's not a legal barricade to every scenario, but it's friction. Friction. I repeated. I'll take it. He printed a form and angled it toward me. Initial here, and sign. I'll email you a confirmation. Paper has a sound when you sign it, a dry whisper that says you're drawing a border. When I left, I texted Inez a photo of the receipt and wrote, I'm okay. She replied with a single heart she never used lightly. On my way back, I drove past a small building with a blue door and a narrow porch. The handwritten sign said Rooms Inquire. Doña Pilar opened before I could knock, as if she timed the distance from car to step. You're Rose's niece, she said. Not a question. Her living room was a museum of polished wood and rules. No shoes in the hall. No smoking. Quiet hours after 10. People think rules are punishment, she said, leading me down a long corridor where the floorboards creaked honest. They are recipes. She showed me a room the size of a careful breath. A twin bed, a dresser that didn't wobble, a window that opened without a fight. Proof of income, 2 references, first month plus deposit, she recited, already measuring the shape of me against the vacancy. I opened my folder. Pay stubs. Lab ID. A letter from my supervisor confirming hours. I had been collecting proof by muscle memory. You are young, she said, scanning the papers, but not a child. Good. She pointed to a form. Sign here if you want it. If you don't leave it for the next one, I signed. The whisper of the pen on paper sounded like something sturdy being built without anyone having to call it noble. Moving in took one trip and half a prayer. Mateo borrowed a van, and we carried 3 boxes a laundry basket. In the grief that doesn't pack neatly, I set my planner on the dresser, placed my toothbrush in a clean cup, and stared at my bed like it was a rumor I wanted to believe. Doña Pilar stood in the doorway, counting the dents in my pots. "No candles," she said. "And if any man stays past 10, he pays double my rate and scrubs the hallway with a toothbrush." Mateo saluted. "Ma'am, I'm allergic to hallways." She didn't smile until he carried my boxes without dropping a corner. That first night, the window let in the sound of the bus sighing at the corner and a neighbor's radio whispering boleros through the walls. I slept like my body had finally found a temperature it could trust. Morning felt like clean water. I made coffee in a chipped mug and watched the steam blur the little fern I'd rescued from a discount shelf. For the first time in years, nothing in the room belonged to anyone's mood but mine. Peace lasted until my phone lit up with Dad's name. I let it ring twice, then answered, because avoiding felt like giving up ground I had just claimed. "Come by the shop," he said. "I need you to look at some numbers." Haycockter's hardware store smelled like metal and men who didn't trust manuals. He had the ledger open on the counter, pages bristling with sticky notes. "The equipment lender is asking for a cosigner," he said, almost casual. "Just for a few months. You know how this works." "I do," I said. "That's why the answer is no." He blinked. "Your brother's expansion is family business." "Family business," I repeated, tasting the phrase like something gone sour. "I'm not the backup battery for your risk." "You live because this house exists," he snapped fast, a flash of a blade. "Because I made it exist." "I live there," I said. "That isn't the same thing." He leaned back, smirked the way he did before a lecture. "Don't make this dramatic. You're not being asked for blood. You're being asked for a signature." "That signature is blood," I said. "Quiet. Clear." A contractor at the far aisle coughed. Dad lowered his voice. "Your brother is building something. And I'm maintaining something," I said. "My life." He closed the ledger with a slap and smiled, a customer service smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Go home," he said, meaning return to the role. "We'll talk at dinner." "I don't live there," I said. The sentence hung between us like a bridge that had just unbolted itself and fallen into a river. I left before he could make the next plank out of guilt. Back at the house, I went to the garage because there were still boxes in there with pieces of me that mattered. The scarf Inez gave me when she graduated, the science plaque. Mom never hung a photo album that proved I existed in more than mirrors. The new lock sneered. I listened and heard something else, a faint hiss behind the door like a snake dreaming. I circled to the side window and on my toes peered through the grime. New pipes radiated from the wall in bright blue and red, cheap lines stitched into the old house like a rush tattoo. A receipt lay on a sawhorse. I craned my neck to read the vendor name and snapped a photo through the glass, the glare slicing the image in half. My phone buzzed at the same time. "Alvaro." "I wanted to confirm," he said. "We documented your statement. And one more thing I forgot to mention. The call yesterday asked if a daughter could confirm over the phone if she was physically with a parent. We told them no. I'm making a note to call you if anyone tries that script again." "Thank you," I said. My voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. "If the account shows any new applications, or if my name appears where it shouldn't, I want to know." "You will," he said. "Control what you can measure." After the call, I walked next door and caught Mr. Lindstrom mid-garbage day ballet wrestling a bag that had leaked something sweet onto his driveway. "Sorry," I said. "Weird question. Does your camera point at our garage?" He straightened, visor crooked, dog yapping at my ankles. "Motion activated," he said, proud like a magician revealing the deck. "Catches raccoons. And teenagers." He pointed to a tiny blue light winking above his door. "Why?" "Just curious," I said, because asking for help felt like confessing weakness, and I hadn't built that muscle yet. "If I ever needed to. Check a time, would you mind?" "Time is what cameras do," he said. "Just bring me the win." He smiled, and in the mirror of his sunglasses, I saw a small version of myself nodding, proof I was there. Mom called as I crossed the lawn. I let it go to voicemail. She left 3 messages in a row, each softer than the last. "Mi amor, call me back. I'm so tired. Don't you love me? We're all making sacrifices." I saved them. Not to gloat, not to trap, but because my side of the story needed a spine. By evening, the group chat had pivoted from guilt to logistics. Damian sent a photo of boxes stacked in his room, which used to be mine. He captioned it, "Efficiency, sis." I typed, "Do not touch the boxes in the garage. MOM, do not sell anything else." The dots bubbled and stopped. "Then Dad will discuss as a family at Sunday dinner." The words landed like a court summons. I felt the old reflex rise to flinch, to apologize, to ask for permission to even breathe, but it hit a wall I'd built that morning with a ballpoint pen at a bank window. At Doña Pilar's, I ironed my one white shirt on a towel because I didn't own an ironing board yet. The hiss of steam sounded like snakes and tea. I packed my backpack with everything that made a life feel like mine. The Silver Key USB. Inez had taught me to use printed screenshots of Mom's listings, the bank confirmation. A spiral notebook, Maribel said, would save me when my mouth couldn't. I wrote a list labeled dinner and numbered the items I would lay on the table. Evidence turns a story into a map. 2 nights later, Damian and his friend hauled a box of fittings from the hardware store into the house like pirates with a chest. I watched from the sidewalk, invisible by practice. They laughed about the neighbor's camera. "He thinks that toy will stop thieves," the friend said. "It's not even pointed the right way." Damian kicked the door shut with his heel cocky. The porch light flickered twice. My chest felt hollow and steady at the same time, the sensation of a bow being drawn back to its anchor. Before bed, I texted Ines, "Sunday, right?" She answered, "I'll be there. Tia Rosa too." Then a beat later, "Proud of you." I stared at those 3 words until the screen dimmed itself like a curtain. On Saturday, I stopped by the house one last time to pick up what I could carry without a key. Mom was on the phone in the kitchen, voice syrup thick for whoever was on the other end. She startled when she saw me, then covered the receiver. "You can't keep making a scene," she hissed softly. "It makes your father's blood pressure." "I'm not making a scene," I said. "I'm making a plan." I lifted the blue tin labeled recipes from the counter. It was lighter than memory. Inside, only rubber bands and a single foreign coin that wasn't ours. The college fund ghost rattled anyway. "Sunday," she said, as if the word could fix the week. "Sunday," I agreed, because sometimes you set the table for the storm you intend to steer. Back at the boarding house, I washed my face in the tiny sink and watched the water spiral like something deliberate. I lay down and listened to the bus at the corner exhale its nightly confession. I wasn't brave yet. I wasn't cruel. I was a person who had finally drawn lines with ink, and lines have a way of teaching your mouth new shapes. I clicked my pen once in the dark, then twice. Then a third time, the sound stitching a small border around the bed. Outside, a siren wailed far away. Inside, the quiet wasn't empty anymore. It was a place I could stand. Sunday night had the soft glitter of Epiphany lights in the window and the smell of cinnamon in the kitchen. Mom set out the rosca with the paper crowns, a bowl of thick hot chocolate tamales under a towel keeping their steam. Dad had shaved and put on the good cologne that hides in the bathroom cabinet all year. Damian rolled his sleeves and talked about square footage like it was a love language. Inez arrived with hospital hair and clear eyes. Tia Rosa kissed the air by my cheek and squeezed my hand, once a pulse that said, "I'm here." I sat at the end of the table where the chair wobbled unless you tucked a napkin under the leg. I didn't fix it. I wanted the wobble. My backpack rested by my feet like a quiet animal. Dad cleared his throat and lifted his glass. "A new year," he said. "Family first. And to Damian N's expansion, may the house grow with us. May it stop leaking first." I said, easy, almost light. Mom shushed me with a smile. "Let's not start." Damian smirked. "We already fixed it." I clicked my pen once in my pocket and felt the world narrow to the circle of this table. The pool of warm light, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tap of Mr. Lindstrom's tiny dog on the sidewalk outside. "Before we eat," I said, "I need to put some things on the table." Dad's jaw flexed. "If this is about rent, it's about truth," I said. I unzipped the backpack and set the manila envelope down like a placemat for a different kind of meal. First, the copy of the refinance documents Inez had given me. I slid the top page to Dad. My finger tapped the little box with my name. "Contingency beneficiary," I read. "Non-owner, non-signer, but first point of contact upon distress." That's me. Not a title I agreed to, not a role I accept. Dad didn't look at the words. He looked at me. "It means we trust you. It means you expect me to catch your fall without a net," I said. "The bank reaches for me before it reaches for you. That ends tonight." Inez coughed softly, a neutral sound that let the page speak for itself. Tia Rosa tilted her head and made a small cluck with her tongue, the noise of a hen noticing a fox print in the dirt. Mom reached for the bread knife. Let's cut the rosca first, she murmured. We can talk after. We'll talk now, Dad said, voice low. Good, I said and laid the second item on the table, printed screenshots. The lamp, the blue tin, the glass jars labeled by pasta shapes. Each page had the seller name, the 5-star halo, the little pink heart. I placed them in front of Mom with the gentleness I reserve for fragile things I don't want to break. These are my donations to the church, I said. Mom's smile trembled, and then stabilized like a plate that's almost slipped. People buy, I tithe. It's the same in God's math. It isn't, I said. She lifted one page and tried to laugh. You haven't used that lamp in years, mi amor. It still had my sticker over the chip, I said. And the contact number on your profile is 1 digit off from our home line, which is clever. It's also a paper trail. I slid one more printout across her second account, the one with the different name, and the same profile photo cropped tighter. You told me church. Church has a basement, not a checkout cart. Damian snorted. So what? She made a little money off clutter. She made money off my life, I said. The blue tin wasn't clutter. Mom's eyes shone. I am tired, she said soft, the script that had worked on me since childhood. I carry so much. I know, I said. And I won't carry what isn't mine anymore. Dad tapped the refinance page like a judge tapping a bench. Enough. Your mother hustles for this house. I break my back for it. Your brother builds. You, I measure, I said. I bring proof. I set down the third item, a Lalivaro's printed email on bank letterhead. This is the record of what I did yesterday. I revoked any implied or verbal authorizations. Effective immediately, no signature can be added in my name by phone, by a daughter in the room, by anyone but me in person with ID. The account is flagged. If anyone tries, they call me first. Dad's mouth made a line so straight it looked carved. You went behind our backs. I used my name to protect my name, I said. That's forward, not behind. The room's sound changed then, like pressure dropping before a storm. Somewhere a pipe ticked. You think you're a cop now, Damian said, leaning back. Audit this, audit that. You've always loved rules because they hide you. I love rules because they keep cows alive, I said. And Maribel's laugh lived in my throat for a second before I swallowed it. Speaking of rules. I placed the phone in the middle of the table, screen dark. Mr. Lindstrom's camera points this way, I said. He's very proud of it. I tapped the screen, and the video bloomed. Damian and his friend at dusk, the porch light flicking a spool of bargain pecs like a candy necklace over his shoulder fittings, spread on a sawhorse, laughter popping like gum. The timestamp was neat, merciless. They worked fast, too fast, elbows up, no permits, no plumber, no attention to code. At one point, Damian looked up and shot the camera, a finger gun, without knowing he had an audience. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Turn that off, she whispered. No, Dad said, not to me, to the screen, as if he could order it to show a different boy. Damian stood. You broke into a neighbor's footage, I asked, I said. He likes exact times. It works, Dad said, grasping for authority. The water runs. The water runs, I agreed. Until it doesn't. Until that cheap coupling pops and floods the wall, and the mold you can't see eats the studs, and the first person the bank calls is me because of that little box. Not you. Me. Silence settled with a weight. The house seemed to listen to itself. I let it. Dad leaned in. What do you want? The question had always been a trap, a maze built to make me pick their prize. Tonight it was a door. I opened it. I want out of your debt story, I said. I want my name off anything it isn't legally required to be on. I want my belongings left alone. I want every conversation about money to start with the person who decides to spend it. That's not how families work. Mom said, both hands flat on the table, as if she could feel it shaking. That's how mine works now, I said. Damian laughed, short and ugly. You gonna sue us, little cop? I'm going to walk away clean, I said. I reached into my pocket and set my house key on the table, a small dull moon in the lamplight. The sound it made was almost nothing, and somehow, it was the loudest thing in the room. I don't live here, I said. I do not pay your mortgage. I do not co-sign equipment. I am no one's contingency. I'm not the napkin under the chair. Dad's voice went quiet and dangerous. You'd let this house fall. I'd let gravity do its job, I said. I have been catching other people's furniture for years. My back is done. Mom's eyes filled. Don't you love us? I do, I said, and the truth of it stung. Which is why I'll stop letting you use love as collateral. Inez slid her hand to the middle of the table, palm up, not asking me to take it, just offering it. Tia Rosa exhaled like a prayer answered a different way than requested. Dad reached for the key and stopped halfway as if the inches were a cliff. If the bank calls, they'll call me, I said. And I'll say the same things I'm saying here. I'm not a signer. I'm not an owner. I'm not a guarantor. I have documentation. And if anyone uses my name without my consent, I'll file the report and follow it where it goes. Damian N's chair scraped. Drama queen. I stood. My knees did not wobble. No, I said. Documentarian. In the corner, the little plastic baby inside the Rosca watched with his eternal smile. I almost laughed. I didn't. I looked at each of them one by one, like I was taking attendance in a class that finally remembered mine. Eat, I said, because feeding people is how we were raised to end screaming matches we didn't allow to start. Enjoy the crowns. I shouldered my backpack, picked up my phone, and stepped away from the table. No one followed immediately. The house hummed alive with its old electricity and its new edges. At the door, I turned back. I hope your expansion is safe, I said to Damian. I hope you pull permits. I hope you check your seals. I let my mouth make the shape of a smile that wasn't warm. You'll want to. I walked out into January air that smelled like rain, turning into something sharper. My eyes felt different, not wider, not harder, just mine. I didn't run. I didn't look back like a movie heroine who needs the house to explode to prove her point. I walked to my car, sat with both hands on the wheel, and let the cold soak through my palms until the tremor left. On the seat beside me, the manila envelope looked smaller than it had at the table. Power never weighs what you imagine. Sometimes it's just paper and a spine. That night at the boarding house, I made a list in the spiral notebook under the lamp I still owned. Change all passwords. Freeze credit at the 3 bureaus. Remove my name from every old utility login. Email the bank. A written confirmation of what I'd said in person, ask for the reply in writing. Download the PDF, back it up to the silver key. Drive, then back it up again. I wrote a short letter to my parents, not a speech. Not a scream, 3 sentences that fit like a lock. I won't be a signer. I won't be a guarantor. I won't be a storage unit. I printed it twice, signed both, mailed one certified, kept the other in a clear sleeve, where I could see my name and the date, living together without arguing. In the morning, I called code enforcement, the non-emergency line, and asked a hypothetical question about permits for interior plumbing changes. The woman on the other end had a voice like a ruler, straight, exact. If work was done without a permit, she said water tests and inspections can be required before sale. She wasn't threatening me. She was reading the weather. I thanked her and hung up. I didn't file anything. Not then. I didn't have to. Days lifted and settled. The bus sighed at the corner. Doña Pilar's radio drifted through the wall like a friendly neighbor who didn't borrow sugar. The lab fridge hummed and the vending machine coughed at 147 like always. I kept the pin clicks to a minimum, not because I didn't need the rhythm, but because quiet finally belonged to me, and I didn't want to drown it with old habits. When fear tried to make a comeback, I read the bank email again and felt the border it drew around my name. A fence that kept a daughter alive. On Thursday, my phone lit up with a photo from Inez Water, spreading from under the door of my old room, a dark widening stain like a mouth opening to swallow the floor. No caption. She didn't need one. 10 minutes later, Dad called, then Mom. I watched the screen ring until it stopped. Another photo arrived, fans whirring, drywall trimmed into ragged squares, the bones of the house showing like a secret, finally tired of keeping itself. Damian texted, "You're happy now?" I stared at the words. Then I typed slowly so each letter would feel the weight of being chosen. "I'm safe now." By Saturday, a for sale sign leaned into our lawn like a tired man. Inez sent a picture of the open house flyer with bullet points that read newer plumbing, and I laughed once, a small mean sound that tasted like old pennies. Then I put the phone down and made tea. Revenge wasn't fireworks. It was paperwork. Boundaries. Gravity doing its job. I hadn't pushed anything. I had stopped holding everything up. On Sunday, I bought a cheap fern for the window and a second-hand chair with a throw that looked like a hug. I sat and listened to the radiator tick. Somewhere a child yelled about a bicycle. Somewhere else a pipe gave way, and a family learned the difference between building and maintaining. I didn't file a complaint. I didn't send the video anywhere. My weapon was the refusal to be used. I wish I could tell you I felt triumphant. Mostly I felt level. Like a scale that had finally found zero and decided to rest there for a minute. The story wasn't over. My name was still in boxes that needed sorting. But when the next call from an unknown number came, I let it go to voicemail without apology. The message said, "We're all making sacrifices." I closed my eyes and thought, not anymore. Not like that. Before we wrap, take a second to breathe with me. If any part of my story sounded like your living room, your garage, your name on someone else's bill, tell me in the comments. I read every single one, because none of us should feel crazy for wanting a clean boundary. If this helped you find your voice, hit like so it reaches someone who needs it at 2 a.m. when the house is too loud to sleep. And subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because I'm not done. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, subscribe. This story isn't over.